Hi, in this video we are going to talk about multiplying and dividing fractions. So this is how we handle it. First of all, let's start with multiplication. When you multiply fractions, you're going to multiply the numerators, you're going to multiply the denominators, and you simplify the resulting fraction if it's possible. Just like any problem with fraction operations, you always want to make sure you simplify your final answer if it is possible. So for this problem, we're going to do 1 times 3 because we multiply the numerators, and we multiply 5 times 5, that these are the denominators, and that's going to be 1 times 3 is 3, 5 times 5 is 25. We cannot simplify that because 3 does not go into 25, and that is going to be our answer. This next problem, 4/5 times 15/16. So again, we multiply the numerators, we multiply the denominators. The numerators will give us 60, the denominators will give us 80. So you can clearly see that this one can be simplified. Just don't know by how much. Both numbers can be divided by 20. So we can divide this by 20 and we can divide this by 20. And that's going to give us 3/4. And that's the answer here. But I want to show you another way you can handle that, which actually works faster. So when I go back to this original problem, you can, when you perform multiplication with fractions, you are allowed to simplify it ahead of time by finding any number on top that can be simplified with any number on the bottom. So if I look at this, I got 5 here and I got 15. So I can divide both of them by 5, and that's going to leave me with 3 on top and 4 on the bottom. I can do the same thing with 4 and 16, as long as 1 on top and 1 on the bottom. These both numbers can be divided by 4. It's going to leave you with 1, that's going to leave you with 4. So the resulting thing is, what do we have now? We have 1/1 times 3/4, and that's going to be 3/4. The nice thing about this is when you simplify it like this, you usually, if everything is simplified completely, you don't have to simplify the final answer. It's probably going to be finalized. Okay, so this problem, if we go with the first approach, we're going to do 5 times 6 divided by 8 times 7. 5 times 6 is going to give us 30. 8 times 7 is going to give us 56. So we need to find the greatest common factor. For these two numbers is going to be 2. So we're going to divide the numerator by 2 and the denominator by 2. And that's going to leave us with 15/28. But if I use the same approach, which I'm actually going to start using with only going to use that after this. If I go back to my original problem and I look at what can be done here, I look at 6 and I look at 8. 6 on top, 8 on the bottom. Both numbers can be divided by 2. So I divide 6 by 2, that's going to leave me with 3. I divide 8 by 2, that's going to leave me with 4. So what am I going to be left with now? I'm going to have 5 times 3 divided by 4 times 7, and I'm going to get 15/28. Alright. Moving on, next problem. Next example. 21/10 times 1/14. So again, I can go ahead and multiply it straight across. 21 times 1, 10 times 14, it's going to be 21/140. We do need to simplify. Both numbers can be divided by 7. So we can divide the top and the bottom by 7. So 21 divided by 7 is 3. And 140 divided by 7 is 21. But let me go back to what I was explaining earlier, which is going to work better because it works faster. So if I look at this right now, I'm going to see that 21 and 14 can be both divided by 7. So I divide 21 by 7, that gives me 3. Divide 14 by 7, that gives me 2. Oops, hold on, that was not 21, that's 20. My mistake. So we're going to have 3 times 1, which is 3. 10 times 2, which is 20, and we get the same answer. So I'm going to start using this approach because I think it's easier to work with, and when you get to the final answer, it's pretty much going to be simplified if everything is simplified in advance. So when I'm looking at this problem, I can see that 9 and 18, those two numbers can be simplified. They can divide both by 9. So 9 divided by 9 is 1. 18 divided by 9 is going to be 2. So that's going to leave me with 1 over 14 times 17 over 2. Right? And you multiply straight across. 1 times 17 is 17. 14 times 2 is 28. Okay. One other thing we need to talk about: how do you multiply a fraction by a whole number? Well, all you really need to do is convert that whole number into a fraction by simply putting it over 1. So I can rewrite it as 5 over 8 times 2 over 1. Because 2 over 1 is 2. So what happens now? Well, we have, if we look at this, we got 2 here, and we got 8. Both can be divided by 2, and that's what you're going to have. And now we're going to have 5 times 1 over 4 times 1, and the answer is going to be 5 fourths. In some cases you may have to write that number as a mixed number. It depends on what your teacher may expect or what the test that you're taking might ask you to do, but I'm going to leave it as an improper fraction here. Alright, so that's multiplication, pretty straightforward, no tricks here. What about division? So when you divide, you will need to do the following process. You are basically going to convert this problem from division to multiplication by doing the following. So you're going to keep the first fraction, you're going to change your operation from division to multiplication, and then you're going to write the reciprocal of the second fraction. You're going to flip it. This is often known as keep, change, flip. And once the problem is changed to multiplication, you are going to use the same process we just used earlier. So let's go ahead and take a look. So I have 12/5 divided by 8/3. So we keep the first fraction, we change division to multiplication, and we flip the second fraction. And this is what we're going to have. So we're going to take a look at that. Can we simplify it now? We got 12 on top, 8 on the bottom. So they both can be divided by 4. So that's going to leave you with 3. It's going to leave you with 2. Alright, and then you are going to have 3 times 3, which is 9, and 5 times 2, which is 10, and our answer is going to be 9/10. 18 over 5 divided by 3 over 10. We're going to have to do the same thing. We're going to have to keep the first fraction, change the division sign to multiplication, and flip the second fraction. We're going to take a look at what we have here. We can divide 18 and 3. They both can be divided by 3. So it's going to leave you with 6. That's going to leave you with 1. And also, we can do the same thing with 10 and 5. They're both divisible by 5. So that's going to leave you with 2. That's going to leave you with 1. So if you look at this very carefully, you will see that the numerator is going to give you 12. The denominator gives you 1. I always tell my students, do not leave your answers like this, because otherwise it looks like you don't know what 12 divided by 1 is, which is 12. So your answer should be written as 12. Okay. Alright. 12 over 25 divided by 5 over 4. Same thing. We're going to write 12 over 25, write multiplication, and flip this fraction. And now we're going to take a look. Is there anything we can cross out? As tempting as it is, you don't have any number on top that can be divided by any number on the bottom. I don't want you to look at these 25 and 5 or 12 and 4 and think that they can be simplified, because they cannot be. They're both, like 12 and 4 are both divisible by 4, but they are both on the top. And 25 and 5 are both divisible by 5, but they're both on the bottom. So there's nothing you can do here. So you're just going to go ahead and multiply. So it's 12 times 4, which is 48. And 25 times 5 is 125, and this will be your final answer in the simplest form. You cannot simplify it. Not every fraction is going to be possible to simplify. Next problem, 13 over 20, keeping that, changing the operation, and flipping the second fraction. So 15 and 20 can be both divided by 5. So if we divide them by 5, this is going to leave you with 3, this is going to leave you with 4. Okay, so we get 13 over 4 times 3 over 2, correct? And that's going to give you, when you multiply, 13 times 3 is 39, and 4 times 2 is 8. You cannot simplify that. That's another nice thing about simplifying in advance, as I already mentioned. When you simplify everything ahead of time, your final answer most likely will not be something that you can simplify even more. Alright, 5 divided by 10 over 9. So how do we divide? Well, how do we divide when a whole number is involved? Same way we talked about. You're going to write it as 5 over 1. You're going to change this to multiplication. So I'm going to put 5 over 1. And you're going to write 9 over 10. So 5 and 10, top and the bottom, both divisible by 5. That leaves you with 1, that leaves you with 2. And then we have 1 times 9 in the numerator, which is 9. And we have 1 times 2 in the denominator, which is 2. Again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to leave it as an improper fraction. Your teacher may expect you to convert it to a mixed number, and you can, but that's not the topic of this lesson. Alright, and I just have a couple more questions here to look at. So what about 5 over 12 divided by 4? Well, so it's the same thing, same idea that we used before. We're going to put it as 4 over 1. So 5 over 12 times 1 over 4. Again, you don't have anything on top and the bottom that can be divided by the same number. So 5 times 1 is 5, 12 times 4 is 48, and that's going to be a final answer. And I have a couple of examples where you have 3 numbers involved. So first of all, you need to be careful and remember that you follow the order of operations, and multiplication and division can be done at the same time as long as you perform them left to right. So there is no, despite some common misconceptions, there is no requirement to do multiplication before you do division. So, but we have one division here, and what we want to do is we want to rewrite that, change it to multiplication first. So 5 over 8 times 9 over 4 times, so we flip this, 16 over 21. Now everything is converted to multiplication. And now we can see what can be simplified. So let's take a good look. We have 16 and 8. So 16 will leave you with 2, 8 will leave you with 1. We have 9 and 21 that can be both divided by 3. That's going to leave you with 3. That's going to leave you with 7. And we also have these two now that can be divided with 4. So that's going to leave you with 2, and it's going to leave you with 1. So now we just need to carefully assemble what we are left with. So from the first fraction, you're going to have 5 over 1. From the second fraction, you're going to have 3 over 2. And the third fraction is going to leave you with 1 over 7. And we simplify all that. We're going to get 15, 5 times 3 times 1, over 14, 1 times 2 times 7, and that's going to be our final answer. Okay. In example 14, this is what I was talking about. You do not do multiplication before this. You do need to rewrite that. So the only number that you're dividing by is, so it's 3/5 divided by 4/15, so it's going to be 3/5 times 15 over 4, but this still has multiplication, so nothing is going to happen with this last fraction. It's going to stay the same. You do not flip it. Okay, now take a look. What do we have here? We have 3 and 9, which will leave you with 1 here and 3 here. We have 5 and 15, which will leave you with 1 here and 3 here. We have this 3 and this 3 that can be divided and give you 1. And we have 8 and 4, which leaves you with 1, leaves you with 2. If you take a good look at this, you will realize that the only thing that's left on top is 2. The only thing that's left on the bottom is 1. So it's 2 over 1, which is simply 2. And I hope this was helpful.